a couple of years ago, machine intelligence bias became a big issue. That is now a major area of research, and we're working on that. Deep learning requires a lot of human data, so these algorithms learn from humans. Since the humans are biased, they'll pick up that bias. And there's been some egregious examples where AIs have done that sort of thing. That's being improved, and these examples are getting better. We have found algorithms that can determine that and actually make these distinctions. Classifiers are very good to look at the documents. Is this an example of hate speech? Is this an example of bias? And then try not to learn from that and not try not to emulate that. So that's a work in progress, but we can actually see that in the AIs, and we can fix it a lot more easily than we can with humans. We can't just really easily go in and change their programming. I do want to mention one thing. There's a motto in the field that life begins at 1 billion examples in deep learning. We have 1 billion examples of some things, like pictures of dogs and cats. That's why we can do a very good job of recognizing them. We don't have 1 billion examples of annotated language. We have found a way to work with that, and it has direct application to life extension. So if you remember in Go, they trained on every online move, which was 1 million moves. That's not 1 billion. Created a fair Go player. They then had the system generate its own data. My team was involved in this by playing itself. And you can annotate the moves because you know which side of the simulated game won. And now you can create 1 billion simulated moves, and the system just soared past the best human in that process. We can apply that to any board game. We can apply that to math. How about applying it to complicated situations? Well, Waymo, the Google self-driving car subsidiary, has applied it to driving. And the actual cars have gone about 8 million miles in real world traffic. That's enough to have created the data to create a realistic simulator of the world of driving, which is not obviously as simple as a Go game. But it's actually quite realistic. So they've now driven over 1 billion miles, a simulated car in the simulator, and now have generated enough training data to basically redo the algorithms using deep learning. How about applying that same thing to biology? And you say, oh, biology is infinitely complicated. It's actually not infinitely complicated. The genome has 3 billion rungs, 2 bits each, that's 6 billion bits, 800 million bytes, but it's replete with redundancies. ALUs repeated 300,000 times. You know, if you apply lossless compression algorithms to data that has a lot of redundancy, you can compress it and do this analysis in singularities near. With compression, the genome is only about 50 million bytes of unique information. That's not simple, but it's definitely a level of complexity we can manage. And we're making substantial progress at being able to actually simulate biology. The FDA will now consider simulated data to approve vaccines, because you don't have 3 years to approve this year's flu vaccine. Within the next 5 to 8 years, I believe we'll have a realistic simulator of biology. Then we can generate training data, do drug discovery and discovery of other interventions very quickly, and also do clinical trials in hours rather than years. It's going to vastly accelerate this whole process.
So it looks like our audience is quite interested in seeing this kind of future come about. And along these lines, I want to read a statement that you made in a fascinating conversation that you had with Max Moore back in 2002, where you wrote, "The ethos of scientific and technological progress is so deeply ingrained in our civilization that halting this process is essentially impossible. Occasional ethical and legal impediments to fairly narrow developments are rather like stones in the river of advancement. The flow of progress just flows around them." Now, here we are sitting here 16 years later, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that statement. Do you still hold this view, essentially, that the singularity is inevitable rather than only likely? And if not, what are the threats, the political, societal, attitudinal barriers that could prevent us from reaching the singularity?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to be prevented from achieving human level and superhuman level AI and similar advances in all these exponential technologies. It is pervasive. All the exciting things we've heard at this conference, the manifestations of actual clinical practice of biotechnology is very recent. That's just the last few years. That's going to really gain momentum over the next few years. What is in our hands, though, and why politics and policy and sociology and philosophy continue to be important, there are grave dangers. Now, I've been accused of being an optimist. I think you have to be an optimist to be an entrepreneur, but I've actually written more about the downsides, including existential downsides, than anyone. I started in the age of spiritual machines, and even before that, in the 1990s. I think we have good paradigms to deal with it, but they're not pat answers. The Asilomar guidelines in biotech have kept it safe, but that doesn't mean you cross it off a list. Okay, we took care of that one because the technology keeps getting more sophisticated. The same technology enables us to reprogram the immune system against cancer. It can also be used by a bioterrorist to reprogram a benign virus to be more deadly, more communicable, more stealthy. These guidelines, both for safety principles as well as strategies and technical guidelines, have kept it safe, but that has to be a very high priority. So I think it can go awry in terms of either existential risk or even more subtle ones like privacy and maintaining human dignity. You mentioned bias, and these things, these are all very important, and it requires people, not just technologists, but ethical philosophers and politicians to be involved, to keep guiding this increasing power of technology.
So thank you. Along these lines, one of our users expressed a concern about centralized control over data, and as we outsource more of our data to the cloud, including data pertaining to our neocortex, how do we protect individual privacy and prevent essentially the corruption and manipulation of very intimate information about an individual?
Yeah, I mean, despite well-publicized problems, there is a general agreement on the importance of privacy. I know that's a huge issue at Google, and we don't hear about significant breaches. For example, in this work on Smart Reply, we've never read a single email unless somebody posted on their own Reddit thread. And we have actually the technology of maintaining privacy, which is unbreakable encryption, has stayed significantly ahead of the technology of decryption. People can actually keep their messages extremely private, and I think we will continue to do that. So I think privacy is alive and well, but there again, we have to give it a priority. Technology is very decentralized. We have, these typical AI dystopian futurist movie where it's the AI versus a brave band of humans for control of humanity. It's not how it's played out so far. We don't have one or two AIs. We have several billion, 3 billion smartphones, among other things, 8 billion smart devices in the world, and they're not in centralized locations. I had to go to the centralized location to get to the computer when I was in college. Now they're in our pockets. And, they'll make their way in our bodies and brains, as well as the computer recently, to do a medical test, and it turned out fine. But it's very decentralized, and we know how to maintain privacy, but again, we have to give a priority to the ethical considerations.